Okay, so now that we're all doing the same thing, what I'd like you to do before you save this file is I'd like you to make sure that you are in the Z up like I am. And because otherwise it's just going to get confusing. We all need to have the same orientation. So if you didn't already, and if you already changed that preference, remember, and just have gotten through a lot of stuff and still haven't quit Fusion yet and relaunched it, remember, for some reason that preference will only take effect when you quit and relaunch. So please make sure Z up is in effect. If you don't see the cube looking like this with the Z up, then double check the preference, make sure it says Z up, and then quit Fusion and relaunch it. And then it'll create a new file and you'll be Z up. Okay, so then the next thing we want to do is actually save this. Whenever you're creating a project, the first thing you want to do is save it and give it a name. It's just a good habit to get into so you never lose your work. So to save in Fusion, we haven't done it yet because we were just doodling. Under File, choose Save. So you've relaunched, your Z is up, because if we create a new project and the Z isn't up, it'll stay that Y up throughout the whole project. And trust me, you will go crazy because the things I'm going to tell you won't make any sense because your orientation is different. It's like you're looking at the world in a different way. Go ahead and call it last name as always, because I'm your boss and that's the way I like things done in my office, to keep people's projects apart, and then just call it key and click save. Okay, and you'll notice it says Oaken Key V0. You'll see it'll create new versions every time you quit and start again so that you can go back to different versions. If you hate what you did one day, you can go back to an earlier version. We'll talk about that eventually. The next thing I want you to do is I want you to create the ring of the key, right? So we're going to create the ring of the key. That's called a torus. And so I'm going to X out of the waffle to give me more real estate. And then, so we're going to make the ring of that key. It's called a torus because that's what engineers call them. And to do that, we could sketch a circle and then we could do what's called revolving, which we will do eventually. So we could sketch a circle and revolve it all the way around to form a ring. But I want you to see how these solid shapes work. So these down here are some basic solid shapes that just save you a little bit of time. And I don't think they're that valuable a lot of the time, but I want you to see how they work just so, if you're working on something and somebody else uses this tool on some tutorial you're using, you know how it works, and then sometimes they are useful. So right now they're a little useful, save us a little time. Instead of drawing a circle and revolving, it'll just take us through all of that in one step. So go ahead and say click Create Torus, okay? And now I'm Z up. I see these three planes to choose from. So again, if you're Y up right now, quit and make a new file and set your preference because you'll go crazy. I want to draw a key, and I think drawing a key, I want you to learn how to use a vertical work plane too, but I think drawing a key makes the most sense if I think of it the way I hold it, which is vertically going towards a lock. I don't think of a key as sitting flat on a surface. I think of it as being held vertically. So for me, it will be easiest to design it like this as opposed to flat. So what I'd like you to do is choose, this would be the YZ plane. So I want you to choose the vertical plane on the right side, not the one closest to you, but the vertical plane on the right side. Again, just so we're all doing the same thing. Okay, and when you choose that, it'll stop and wait for you to draw the circle the size that you want the torus to be. So I'm going to click and I'm going to draw. And again, just hold the mouse button down, drag it whatever size you want, but you're going to type in that you want it to be 50 millimeters, 50. And again, here we're not doodling anymore. Everyone has to do exactly the same thing. And what it does is it just automatically creates you a torus. Instead of having to draw a circle and revolve it, it's just a little quicker. Trust me, you'll understand someday if you don't know. I believe right out of the box that it is making your ring 10 millimeters in diameter. So it's making the actual fatness of it 10 millimeters in diameter. but double check over here in the dialog box that yours says 50 and 10. If yours is different, please change that to 10, or your ring won't be like my ring, and again, you'll go crazy. And don't worry about these other things. Eventually, we'll use them. I'll explain them, I promise. And go ahead and click OK. And you've got your torus ready to go. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the little post that comes out from the torus. And this is a little, I'm going to get rid of my waffle so that I have more real estate. So this is going to use a brand new tool, which is a little complicated to use. So watch carefully. You might have to watch this a few times. What I want to do is I want that post to come straight out of the ring going in this direction somewhere, right? So in fact, I'm just going to right click and revolve a little so I'm looking at this more like this. I want this to come straight out of here and go out this way into space. The problem is if I go, so in order to make that little post, I'm going to draw a circle and pull it out. The problem is that if I try to sketch, I can sketch on one of the work planes or a planar face like we did with the little box, but toruses don't have a planar face. It's a curved face. So that won't work for me. I can't draw on the torus directly. And if I draw on here, it's not going to be at all where I want it. And it will take so long to do this. Trust me, that won't work either. So what you often have to do in Fusion is create your own artificial plane. Okay, so that is under this construct menu. And you'll see there are all kinds of different planes. And again, we will use a lot of these over time. But the one you use most is this one called an offset plane. And I believe it's F, but I don't see an F next to it. But I swear it's F. But anyway, under construct, choose offset plane. And now what you need to do is tell it what it's offsetting from. So you do need to tell it what direction it's going to be in. And you might want to just watch me do this, and then I'll go back and do it again step by step, or just rewind the video. So I'll do this once and then I'll do it again step by step. So maybe just watch me do this. So I need to tell it I want it offset from this plane because it's hard to explain in words. So I'm going to choose this XZ plane. And then I need to tell it how far offset I want it to be. So I want it to be offset 100 millimeters from the origin, which is how far I want the post to stick out, because that's what my boss told me are the parameters. So I am going to type in here. And again, you could drag it, but why would you ever drag an arrow when you can just type in a number? And type in 100 and click OK. And there is my new plane that I just created, because the regular work planes won't work and this doesn't have a plane on it. So I'm going to make a circle where I want the post to end. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create sketch. And I'm going to tell it I want to draw on that plane I just made, okay? So the whole reason I made that plane is to draw on it. And then I'm going to tell it I want to draw a circle, and I want the circle to be right in the middle of the ring. So I'm going to find that origin, and I'm going to start pulling, and this circle needs to be 10 millimeters. So click 10. And you will have a circle. And if I click Finish Sketch, you'll see there's a circle floating out here in space that I'm going to drag back to the ring. But I'm just going to quickly, like I promised, I'm going to do that again. So because this is so important, I want to draw a circle out here. So I'm going to construct an offset plane. I want it to be offset from this plane, because this one would make it go out towards me. I want it to go out away from the ring in this direction. So I've got to choose this plane and type in 100. That creates a plane. And again, if you need help with this, just grab me in class and I can help you, because sometimes it just takes me sharing a screen to looking over the shoulder usually. I'm going to ask it to create a sketch, and I've got to choose this plane that I just made, or this won't work. So I'm going to choose this plane, and I'm going to draw a circle, and it is drawing on that plane, but I need to tell it where on that plane. So I'm just finding the origin here, which is right where the center of the ring is, and I'm going to drag out a circle. It doesn't matter how big, because I'm going to type in 10, and I'm going to hit OK, and tell it I'm finished sketching. And you should have a circle out here like that. You might need to orbit differently to see what you're doing. Okay, so now we have this little circle floating in space, and we need to turn it into a little post that connects to the cylinder. And this is actually from a guy named Lars, who does these really great tutorials for Autodesk, but I do them a little quicker and a little briefer, and I think a little clearer. So the deal here is we want to extrude this out to the key, but there's some complexity to that that'll make you learn some new things about extruding. So what we're going to do is say modify press pull or Q, and then you want to choose the circle that you want to extrude, and it wants to go that way, but we're going to go this way instead. So you'll notice I could drag this over. When it runs into the key, it actually starts cutting into it, so it turns red. And then also, see how its end is flat? So that's not really going to join the key nicely the key ring nicely when it ends. So that's not a positive thing either. So what we want to do is we want to do some special things here. One is over here where it says distance. Instead of choosing a distance and telling it how far to go, we can say to object and then just click on what we want it to run into. And then you see how it then becomes part of the key. And it is intelligent enough to know not to stay being a cylinder. It knows to sort of merge into the ring so that you have a nice connection there. The other thing I wanted to point out here is that you do have some choices. Here you could join, or you could have this be a new body. And the only difference is if you want each of these to be separate objects, you would choose new body. For instance, if you wanted to end up being made of a different material or even a different color, you might have it be new body. And this will come up from time to time in some of the projects we do later, but I wouldn't worry about that too much. Just make sure it says join, make sure it's not cutting, and make sure you go to object up here. That's the big learning moment here, is sometimes you don't just type in a distance, but you tell it to go to an object, and then it merges nicely with the object. And then go ahead and click OK, and now you've got the post part of the key. Okay. So now what we want to do is create the little flag, the little rectangular part of the key. And of course, that also has a little bit of a complexity to it. So it's going to make us do a little bit of extra work. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is show you what not to do. Just so you can see this, it's a subtle difference, but it makes a huge difference again to make the objects merge together as opposed to be sort of semi-attached. So what I want to do is create the little flag. Here, I'll go back to my key, right? So I want to create the little key part of the key, right? So to do that, I need a rectangle. So you're not going to do this the way I'm doing it. So just watch so I can show you how not to do this. So again, the first thing I need to do is decide which orientation I want the rectangle to be in. And obviously I want it to be in this orientation, right? And if not, by the time I'm done, you'll see what I mean if you don't understand right now. So I'm going to tell it what work plane I want to work on, which is just that work plane. And then I'm going to draw a rectangle just dropping off of here. And I'm going to make it 25 by 15, which is what it's going to end up being. Okay. And then I'm going to say, and again, you're not going to do this because you'll see it won't quite work. I'm going to finish sketch. And then I am going to I'm going to push pull that guy. And you'll actually get to see a little something special here about push pull. So here what I want to do is I want to push pull, I think it's, let me double check here. Yeah, 3 millimeters in each direction. So I want to push pull this way 3 millimeters and push pull this way 3 millimeters. So I'm going to select the rectangle. That's what I want to push pull. And here the special command is that I could go two sides, which means one side one amount and the second side one amount. Or in this case, I just want to go symmetric. I want it to go the same amount both ways from the rectangle, which is 3. Okay. And then if I click OK here, you'll see the problem. See how it's not become part of the post? It's created this kind of weird, I think it's awkward, right? That doesn't look like a key. There's this weird, awkward joint there. So now you see some of the subtleties, but it's not quite what I want it to be. So now I'll do it the right way. So now I'm going to create a sketch. Sorry, since I was showing you something I didn't want. So again, this time you can do it with me. We want to choose this orientation. We don't need to construct some special plane. This plane works perfectly. And then when we make our rectangle, 2-point rectangle R, click this guy. What we want to do is we want to join it right. We want to draw it from the center of the cylinder. And you'll see that will work fine. So again, I'm making sure that I got that green square right at the center of the cylinder so I know I'm on an edge. And I'm going to come down, and again, I will make this 25, hit tab, type in 15, hit enter. And now I've got my flag the way I want it to be. And now I am going to say finish sketch because my flag is finished. And I am going to push pull. So Q, or under modify, I'll usually use menus just because you can't see my keyboard. But you can push Q. I'm going to tell it I want to take the little flag and I want it to be symmetrically push pulled 3 millimeters, which you could do either place, and make sure you choose join because that rectangle is up into the post. It might think it wants to cut, so make sure you change to join. So again, symmetric, 3 millimeters here or here, it doesn't matter where you type it. Make sure it says join and click OK. And now you'll see it's a nicer, smoother transition. Although it's not a perfectly smooth transition, I will show you how to do something called a fillet when we're all done with this. Okay, so now I'm going to put the teeth into this. So make it look like a real key. And what I want to do is I want to cut out a part of this rectangle to give it the notches that it needs. And if you don't know what I mean, just watch the video and you'll see what I'm doing. So I'm going to create a sketch to make those notches. This time I don't want to use one of these planes. I want to cut right into the flag here. So I'm going to just tell it I want to draw right on this. It'll make my life easier. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a rectangle, 2-point rectangle. Make sure you get that green square that you're at the bottom corner there and then just drag up. And I want this to be 6 wide by 15 high. Okay, so 6 by 15, click enter. Okay, and then I'm going to cut that out. So Q or finish sketch. And then modify, press pull or Q. And then I'm going to tell it I want to cut this. And then if I start going in the negative direction here, you'll see it'll cut. And the problem here is how far do I cut, right? So you could figure out exactly how thick this is. It was 6 millimeters. You could type that in, but this is just another nice little trick. And obviously that's what I'm here to teach you is all the different possibilities that you need that are really essential to learning Fusion. So here, if you make sure it is cutting, so you could just change the operation to cut and then click all. And that will, again, it will use its intelligence, its artificial intelligence to know how far to go in order to cut through everything it sees. Okay, so you can use all and just say cut through everything you see and click OK. And now you've got a nice little notch cut out of your key. So now what I want to do is cut half of this piece off. So watch carefully while I do this. I want to cut a half of this little guy off to make to make the key even a little more complicated and show you another little trick. So I'm going to create a sketch, and this time I want to sketch on the end of the key. And if you need to, you could zoom in for this because you're going to be making a little rectangle. So R for rectangle, or make a little rectangle. Make sure you got that little corner and come up and to the side. And this you want to be, I just happened to draw it exactly right. You want it to be 6 by 3. Type it in if you didn't happen to get incredibly lucky like I just did. Okay, so now I've got this little thing that I want to cut out. So I'm going to say finish sketch, and I'm going to modify push pull, and I'm going to hit home because it's, that doesn't work either. So I'm going to orbit so I can see what's going on here. And I'm going to choose the rectangle. And this time, if I say cut all, look what happens. It cuts through everything it can see. So that is not going to work for you at all, right? So in this case, you will have to either do a distance or do to object, which might work. So you could do a distance, and if you know how big this is, you could do that. You could drag it a certain amount. If you leave a lot of it, you could just leave it sticking out. It won't matter unless something happens to get in the way there. Or you could do to object and say cut to here, and then it will just stop at the key. So just to show you a bunch of different possibilities, in this case, I think I would probably just do distance and then just have it drag a little bit further than the end of the key and click OK. And now I've got my nice little notch. Okay, so now I've got one more feature to add, and then I'm going to show you how to chamfer and fillet. So the feature I want to add is a little hole in here. Like there's a little peg inside the lock that this engages to on these old-fashioned skeleton keys. So again, I'm going to create a sketch. And this time I'm going to create the sketch right on the end of the key again, like I did before. Could have done both those sketches at once if you were trying to save time, but that would be really complicated to do as a teacher. So I'm going to make a circle, center diameter circle. And again, you might want to zoom in and then make sure you are right on the origin. When I'm right on the origin, in this case, there's a little blue circle that forms over it so that it's right in the middle of the key there. And I'm just going to start a circle, and this needs to be 4 millimeters, and click OK. And then what I want to do is finish sketch, and then modify, press pull, and I'm going to click on this guy. And again, for some reason, sometimes it pivots and sometimes it spins and sometimes it doesn't. I still haven't figured that out. So I'm going to spin so I can see what I'm doing. This time I use the view cube, right click, and orbit is fine. And then I'm just going to drag this guy inwards. And I want, the peg is 10 millimeters. So minus 10 would be a way to do this. The peg is 10 millimeters long that hole is going to engage into. I could have typed it here. I dragged it. However you want to do it, get a 10 millimeter hole. So you get practice at doing that. And now you've got that nice 10 millimeter hole. And I'm going to click home so you can see this guy. And I orbit it again a little bit. Okay, so now what I want to do is show you chamfer and fillet. A lot of times when you have sharp corners like this on things, when people manufacture them, they just give them a little bit of a chamfer. So they just give them they knock off the corner. And if you look at any table you're sitting at, I think we talked about this when we were doing Tinkercad, when we talked a little bit about their little chamfer tool. But generally, things don't have sharp corners on them, so often we will chamfer them. And as you might expect, that's under the modify command because we're modifying, and it's here. It doesn't get its own letter, so you'll just have to find it. And then what you need to do is here, once again, the dialog boxes are everything, so you need to look at your dialog box. What's it waiting for? It's waiting for you to tell it what edge you want to chamfer. So I want to chamfer this little ring. Now, I might want to chamfer more, in which case I could go around and choose more of these things. But in this case, I'm not going to. So I just realized I made a mistake doing that. So just on purpose so that I can show you. If you select the wrong things, you can just X out your selection right there, right? So if I select, once I've selected things, I can always X out my selection to undo my selection and get back to what I wanted to do in the first place. Okay, so then once you've selected, it might be waiting for you to do more selections, but probably not. You could use the arrow to do this, but again, generally you're going to be getting parameters. So let's say the parameter here is I want a 1 millimeter chamfer. Once you type in 1, you can see it creates that nice little, it knocks off the edge of 1 millimeter of that corner. So that's a chamfer, and you can do that on any corner you want to do that to. Fillet is where you have a joint like this, where I don't know if you've ever, I welded at one point. I worked for a steel sculptor and welded for him. So whenever we did welds, you would create a little, it would create a little blended area between the two joints, which strengthens it and also creates a nice transition. So a fillet is just a way to create a nice transition. So I'll show you how that works. So if we choose modify fillet, once again, it wants edges. I want to do both sides here. And you might have noticed there's one nice thing in Fusion. I'm going to select, again, it's waiting for me to select edges, faces, or features, because there's all kinds of things you can do with a fillet. But I'm going to choose that edge. One nice thing in Fusion is even though this edge is invisible, I don't need to orbit to see it. If I mouse over it and it's hidden, it will actually turn black to show me, or dark gray, I guess, to show me it exists. So I'm going to choose that one as well. Now that I have two edges to fillet, I'm going to type in 1 millimeter here, and you can see it creates a nice little transition. If you want a slightly bigger transition, you can type in 2 millimeters and click OK. And now you have this nice little transition. Okay. The last thing I want to show you is Fusion wants you to see the edges of everything while you're working. But it's not always best to see the edges because it kind of looks a little confusing and you can't see how beautiful that fillet is, for instance. So if you want to not see the edges, you can change your visual style. And I believe even though I had you simplify on your preferences, I believe you have this choice still because I simplified. So you can say, just show me shaded, and that will get rid of the edges so you can really see what your project looks like for real. And later with a, well, actually, right after we do this, I will show you how to actually do some appearances too at some point. So later I'll show you how to do appearances, like how to add color and things like that. But for today, all I want you to see is if you want to see the project without the edges drawn, you can see what it's really going to look like. Please, you will need those. You will go crazy if you don't have them when you're actually doing your design work. So please change it back to shaded with visual edges. Okay, and then your key is done. And like I said, later, after we've done a couple other projects, we'll come back and we'll add some color to this and things like that. But I want to get on to some more design work and do the appearance work all at once. Fusion is saving automatically. What you might notice is when you click quit, sometimes it's going to tell you it's still uploading to the cloud. If it does that, please don't close your computer or quit your computer. Let it finish that process so that otherwise things get kind of complicated because part of it's on your computer and part of it's on the cloud and it's just kind of messy. So please, if you do go to quit, and you will want to quit because it's going to crash your computer if you start opening up a lot of other stuff. When you do go to quit, sometimes it's going to tell you, like right now, it says upload pending. So if there is an upload pending, please let that upload go, and eventually it will quit like it just did for me there.